How can you not love a good BMW? What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. If you guys are new here, do me a huge favor, go down and subscribe. Today, we're going to give you guys a 4-year review, ownership experience of owning a 2000 BMW M Roadster. Yeah, it's been 4 years. I cannot believe that. In those 4 years of ownership, I have put on 7,000 miles? Yeah, not too many. The car didn't get driven enough for a couple different reasons. I bought a Mustang and basically only drove that for 1 year. I bought a Miata and then basically only drove that for 1 year. And this car kind of sat in the garage and appreciated in value significantly. With that being said, let me turn the car on real quick. Taking a quick look at this dash interior. That's finally turned on. Currently sitting at about 85,000 miles. Turns over no problem. I have put a couple $1,000s of work into this vehicle for a couple of different weird things that went wrong with it, a couple of maintenance items that it needed, and it might need a couple more $1,000s worth of work here coming in the next 3 or 4 years. I have no plans to sell this car. This car has been here from the start, and at one point I did consider it because its value had rose significantly more than what it was. I bought this car for well under $15,000. At this point in time, I would estimate this car to be worth closer to $20,000. It's really hard to put a price on these cars. I see them fluctuate a lot with spec and miles and year, especially because it changed the motor. But also I just see them fluctuate a lot, depending on everything. I see some cars like $30,000 for similar cars to this. I see similar cars to this sometimes for $20,000. These cars are a little bit of a harder sell because not too many people know about them. But when they do sell, they sell for a decent amount more than what I bought it for at the very least. I think we should go take her on a little drive, talk about some things that went wrong, talk about some things going into the future, what I want to do to the car, and a couple of costs and figures associated with maintaining the car, owning the car, and why I haven't really driven it too much, and what my plan is for the future. Because I don't plan to sell it, but I do plan to do some things with it. Now I know there's bound to be some of you who have stumbled upon this video that have literally no idea what this car is. I know there's people thinking, aren't you just driving a Z3? How is your Z3 worth close to $20,000? Why does your Z3 have M flags, M logos on the vehicle? Well, this isn't quite what you would call a Z3. If you guys have ever been familiar with some of the weirder BMWs that have come out and now have a huge cult following, one of those is the Clown Shoe. The Clown Shoe, in all essence, is a Z3 coupe. But the legendary Clown Shoe is the M Coupe because they put an M3 motor in it. This is the M Roadster. It's basically the same thing as the Clown Shoe, except it has a drop top. It's an extremely hot day outside. Got the air con blasting. But let me turn that off real quick. I've owned this car since I was 17 years old. I bought the car 1 week after my 17th birthday. Now, this car means quite a lot to me. It's the first car I drove manual on. It's the first car that I broke. It's the first car that I fixed. I haven't worked on this car myself yet, but owning a Miata has given me more confidence in order to work on this car. I was always scared to do most of the things myself. You know, I think that's fair. This is a very expensive car, and it's not the most beginner friendly. I bought a Miata for a couple of reasons. Number one, I wanted one, but also because I wanted to learn how to work on my cars. I think I'm finally comfortable touching certain things on this car. Now, I have always been obsessed with BMWs, M3s in particular. I've always wanted to buy an E36 M3. And, well, we went to go look at a Porsche. And the car just, it wasn't quite ready yet. We couldn't walk away with it during that day. This car caught my dad's eye. At the time, I thought it was a regular Z3. I wasn't really paying attention to it because I was ready to pick up a Porsche, even though it was a Boxster, but I think for the price, they're amazing cars. But this caught his eye, and he kind of like went back to it a couple of times, and he finally asked, how much do you want for it? And they wanted a little under 15 at the time. I have to go back and look at exactly how much I paid for it. But essentially, we walked out the dealership with the car, and it turned out to be one of the best kind of impulse decisions that we've bought in quite some time. It's a fun car, right? It's something obviously you don't see, but it's also something that you don't really see many people talking about. You don't really see them in the media too much. You know, it's not a rare car that people are hyping up all the time. It's a car that very select people have, and it's more of an enthusiast thing. It's like for the people who own them, they get it, and for the people who don't, they just don't. And I feel like the car has grown a little bit in popularity. It's a Z3. It's the ultimate version of the Z3. As E36 M3 prices continue to rise and rise, these cars will rise there as well. That being said, let's talk a little bit about my experience over the last 4 years or so. I learned manual on this car, which definitely put a little bit of extra strain on the slave cylinder. I broke the slave cylinder. Had to get the slave cylinder fixed. The clutch was going out. It was about time, I suppose. 80,000 miles or so. It's when the clutches get a little tired, get a little dated, or whatever you might want to call it. 80,000 is a good time for them to kind of end up wearing themselves out. I don't know how the previous owner drove the cars or anything like that. For the most part, it was driven about 4,000 miles evenly throughout its life. Makes sense. This car has basically always lived in Illinois, but it was never driven in winter. It was basically babied by most likely an older person. So I had to replace slave cylinder, had to do a clutch, regular maintenance service. But then something weird happened with the electrical system, which apparently is very common in the E36 generation cars. The rear trunk has wires going to the taillights. After time, opening and closing the trunk, those split. Yeah, they just split. So I had to pay a couple $100s in order to get that tracked down, figure out what was going on with it, figure out why my lights weren't working. Because it wasn't just the rear, it was basically the front right and the rear left, or the other way around. The lights weren't working. And other than that, basic maintenance like oil changes, clutch, slave cylinder, lighting fix is all I've done to the car so far. And really all that she needs right now is another annual service with an oil change, some new fluids here and there, with it hitting 85,000 miles now, and she's ready to go for another 10,000 miles. Drop the top, has a motor to do that. I'm gonna drop the windows. It's not insanely hot outside, but it's fairly hot. It's a little K truck from Japan. Anyways, almost 300 horsepower. Only came in manual. It's a riot to drive. It's a riot to drive. It's a super fun car. This car is bone stock, and it's just so fun, and I've never really wanted to do anything to it to make it super extreme, because it's just such a perfectly balanced car. And you get a little bit of that exhaust noise when the top's down. It has all the power you would want. It handles well, but it's still comfortable on the road. It's a very, very well balanced car. I've thought about doing wheels, just because these original ones are pretty expensive. We'll see whether I put a new set of wheels on it or not. I really like the original wheel design. I think it looks awesome. BMW is like probably the best manufacturer when it comes to OEM wheels. That's my opinion. But it needs tires. This car is just so good. It's just so good. Straight line acceleration, has enough to have fun. It has more than enough to get you in trouble. Handles well around the corners because of course it is an M car. It's also not very clunky. Like the Miata feels like a tin can. This car feels like a proper German sports car, which it is. Makes sense, right? It's not an easy car to drive, and I will say that. It definitely challenges you as a driver, and driving this car, learning manual on this car, has been probably one of the best things that I did. Because if I can drive this car, I can drive any car. And that's really true. It's a very hard clutch, a very hard gearbox to drive, but mastering it and perfecting it, I'm still not there. Mainly because I drive the car so far and in between that every time I do master it, I end up not driving it for a little bit and forgetting the exact quirks. As far as what this car is going to get, what the next things are, some small maintenance. Wheels, it's gonna get a subframe in the next 3 or 4, 5, 6 years. Something like that when it needs to be done, and a cooling system. And basically any other maintenance item that it may need at that moment in time. I made a full video on things that I want to do with it in the future. If you guys did enjoy the video, please let me know. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel because that's all I have for this video. Other than that, I'll see you guys in the next one.